Imagine a valley as spectacular, beautiful, and awe-inspiring as Yosemite. That valley was Hetch Hetchy, a valley that has the Tuolumne River flowing through it and lies within Yosemite National Park. But then, one day, the valley was destroyed and drowned under 300 feet of water. It is now a blemish on the face of Yosemite National Park. How could something like this ever be allowed to happen? It may seem like perhaps the worst disaster in the history of environmentalism, but it was in fact a success in the long run. John Muir, Hetch Hetchy's defender and the most famous early conservationist at the time, championed many successful environmental causes like Yosemite, but was stunned by this defeat. Although John Muir regarded Hetch Hetchy as a defeat, his stance brought attention to environmentalism and invigorated the movement to preserve nature.
In the 1880s, San Francisco started to show interest in the nearby water supply of Hetch Hetchy. But until 1901, they did not have a need for Hetch Hetchy's water, as they were receiving water from the Spring Valley Water Company. But then, the mayor, James D. Fallon, began to tire of paying too much for the limited water supply of the Spring Valley Water Company. Muir took a stand to prevent this, and initially succeeded. The Secretary of the Interior, Ethan Allen Hitchcock, refused to accept Fallon's proposal due to the fact that Hetch Hetchy was within national park boundaries and Theodore Roosevelt supported protecting it. For years afterwards, Muir would repeatedly send letters to Roosevelt to support Hetch Hetchy, as San Francisco did the same for the dam. As Muir said in his book, The Yosemite,
Hetch Hetchy, far from being a common, plain, rock-bound meadow, as those who have not seen it seem to suppose, is a grand landscape garden, one of nature's rarest and most precious mountain temples.
San Francisco appealed with the argument that damming and submerging it 175 feet deep would enhance its beauty by forming a crystal clear lake. Muir responded by saying that it would be
an eyesore and a dismal blot on the landscape, and that when the waters receded, it would expose the slimy sides of the basin, revealing driftwood, waste, death, and decay.
Victory was in Muir's sights when tragedy struck. It was April 18th, 1906, at 5:12 a.m., when the ground began to shake and the buildings were set ablaze. The infamous San Francisco fire and earthquake struck. Fallon falsely charged that if his application had been promptly approved, they would have been able to fight the fire with the water from Hetch Hetchy. However, the amount of water was not the problem. In fact, there was an abundance of water, and the real problem was that the pipelines had ruptured due to the earthquake. After the earthquake, everything changed. People became more sympathetic to San Francisco's cause and became ever more water hungry. James R. Garfield became Secretary of the Interior in 1907 and was far more supportive to San Francisco's cause than his predecessor, Hitchcock. Theodore Roosevelt suggested to Garfield that he should limit his plans to Lake Eleanor and not dam Hetch Hetchy, but Garfield continued with his plans to dam Hetch Hetchy.
Muir took a stand and wanted to prove Garfield wrong, so he went to Lake Eleanor with some engineers and determined that there was enough water to provide for San Francisco's needs. However, Lake Eleanor was not enough for Garfield, and he continued his support for the dam. In 1908, Garfield granted San Francisco rights to develop Hetch Hetchy. Roosevelt leaned toward supporting Muir while he was in office, but after he left office, Muir lost the presidential support. Muir would then realize that his chances for succeeding were getting slimmer. However, Muir would not give in. He kept fighting along with the Sierra Club and other conservationist groups. In 1912, San Francisco hired Michael O'Shaughnessy as a head engineer to develop Hetch Hetchy. As the movement for the dam grew, Congress passed the Raker Act in 1913. The Raker Act granted San Francisco the right to build a dam in Hetch Hetchy and generate hydroelectric power. San Francisco commenced building the dam in 1914.
Crushed by his defeat, John Muir died, heartbroken, later that year. Finally, in 1923, the O'Shaughnessy Dam was completed. Hetch Hetchy's tragic loss struck a chord in the hearts of environmentalists everywhere. But its calamitous inundation would not go in vain. Thanks to Hetch Hetchy, countless other dams were prevented. Environmentalists everywhere rallied to the battle cry of Hetch Hetchy and took a stand to prevent another such disaster. In the words of Mark W.T. Harvey, Muir and his Sierra Club lost the battle to save Hetch Hetchy. But the dam that now floods that beautiful valley has forever after served as a battle cry in subsequent controversies about reclamation and preservation in the United States. Hetch Hetchy's influence was first seen in the battle for Yellowstone Lake in the 1920s. Montana irrigators sought its water at a devastating price. But because of Hetch Hetchy's precedent, people saw what happened to a river dammed and the destruction it could cause. In the words of Michael J. Yoakum, a member of the 6th Biennial Conference on the Greater Yellowstone Lake, but the Yellowstone Dam battle would probably not have been won without Hetch Hetchy. In a way, the country needed a Hetch Hetchy somewhere in the national parks to illustrate what did not belong in them, to demonstrate that national parks should be inviolate. Once again, in 1941, industrialists sought to destroy yet another beautiful natural feature, Echo Park. But environmentalists had learned a lesson during the battle for Hetch Hetchy, to band together to stop the destructive hand of industry. In 1941, the Bureau of Reclamation proposed a dam in the beautiful Echo Park, despite the fact that it is within national park boundaries, just like Hetch Hetchy. But environmentalists bitterly opposed it and took a stand, using the example of Hetch Hetchy and its call to arms as a way to combat the Bureau. Their stand succeeded, and the plan to dam up Echo Park was scratched.
In 1943, another dam was proposed. This time, it was on the western border of Glacier National Park, supported by the Corps of Engineers and the Bonneville Power Administration. But Hetch Hetchy's legacy once again prevented the construction. Newton B. Drury, the director of the Park Service, believed that Hetch Hetchy's loss could not be repeated, and he worked to end the proposal. Finally, he succeeded, and the proposal was denied. In the 1950s, the Bureau of Reclamation began to consider constructing two dams in the Grand Canyon, the Bridge Canyon Dam and the Marble Canyon Dam. According to Sierra Club member and former president of Restore Hetch Hetchy, Harold Wood, these dams would not have been saved if it were not for Hetch Hetchy. Its loss became, once again, a rallying point through which environmentalists could take a stand together to stop the threat. Hetch Hetchy was a valley once as grand and beautiful as that pinnacle of grandeur, Yosemite, but it was crushed and drowned for the desires of industrialists. But its loss did not go in vain, as John Muir's failure became a rallying cry for future environmentalists. His stand brought attention to environmentalism and invigorated the movement to preserve nature. The battle is still going on today. Restore Hetch Hetchy was founded in 2000 and is fighting to restore Hetch Hetchy's former beauty.
Dam Hetch Hetchy, as well dam for water tanks, people's cathedrals and churches, for no holier temple has ever been consecrated by the heart of man.